Halloween
forever.
Good morning, rise and shine, campers. Here we are, the first ever episode number 1, the inaugural episode of the Halloween is Forever podcast. Welcome. We're doing it, guys.
We are here to party.
We are fully here. This is our first ever episode.
And go kayaking.
We are, oh man.
And archery.
Archery. There's multiple instances of archery that go horribly wrong. We're going to talk about them in this episode. Welcome to the first ever episode of Halloween is Forever, where we pick a topic and listen to 3 mutant horror nerds rip each other's guts out on our way to deciding whose favorite flick reigns supreme. We're here.
I like
We're
being
doing
called
it.
a mutant. It feels the most appropriate thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I feel
just
like
it's
I'm at home on this podcast.
It's a flattering term. It's a term of endearment.
I get it.
But yeah, so we're going to jump into it. In case you haven't listened to the intro episode, what the fuck are you doing? We literally recorded it for you to get the details. Are you not gonna? You're gonna not listen to it, and then you're gonna sit here and ask us questions about the format of the show? I'm projecting on the listener already. We're going to talk about...
It's always good to assault the audience first, Brian.
Right off the bat, I need to set a tone that I'm not going to take any of your shit. Okay? We're going to talk about our first episode where we're each going to pick, if you didn't listen to that intro episode, again, I'm already borderline furious with you, but we are going to each pick our favorite film or one of our favorite films or particularly poignant or decisive film for us individually that relates to the topic. We're going to argue it. We're going to probably talk about beer. We're probably going to talk about blood and guts and all manner of things like that as well. And then we're going to eventually try to decide whose pick is the best. So in case you didn't pick it up from that just whimsical, delightful little intro that we had, our first episode is camp slashers. How do we feel about this topic? Are we excited for it?
Oh, I'm super here for it.
Yeah, we talked about this on the intro episode as well. I think we talked about it on social media. We're going to rely on social media friends. We're going to rely on listeners to kind of give us some of those topics in the future. But we thought, you know what? Everyone knows the very well-known podcast parlance, getting one in the can. Everyone knows that. Everyone who's ever done a podcast knows
Everybody
that.
got it.
We got one. We got to get one in the can here. So we picked our first topic on it, and we thought, you know what? In real time here, we're cruising into Memorial Day weekend. Summer's right around the corner. I got my flippy floppies on. I'm drinking some summery beers. The first thing I think...
I've never been to summer camp before.
I haven't either. That's probably an interesting topic. Maybe we should talk about before we jump in. Have any of you been? Steve? Well, Meg hasn't. Steve, have you been to summer camp?
Oh, I think campers, we should sound off. It's...
I immediately think of the introductory. Like, I would love to start this with the introductory song to Salute Your Shorts.
Yeah.
Let's we're out with that.
Yeah.
You can't. For those of you who can't see me, I have that big giant like blob of sunscreen on my nose, like ugly right now. I've got my flip flops. We're ready to party.
Yeah, I totally did summer camp.
Did you?
I was a Boy Scout way 20 years ago, however long ago. Yeah. I was a Boy Scout, so we did summer camp.
Did you go to like full on like go stay in bunks for weeks, months on end kind of thing? Nice.
It wasn't bunks. It was it was dirty ass cots on pallets with canvas canvas over as a tent. It was pretty brutal, but
I think you were a child soldier, Steve. I don't think that's camp.
Okay.
How many patches did you get?
We had our AK-47s. It was just normal camp.
I had my bow and arrow. I had my rifle. I had my knife.
You pretty much had every patch that all of the serial killers in all of these movies had.
Oh yeah. And then I also know how to swim, and I have a wallet that I made from
Was it made
random
from
bits.
like duct tape?
Yeah, no, it was made from leather, whatever quote unquote leather might be.
Oh.
It was made
Did
from.
you kill the animal to make that too? That's
I didn't
really
see it
important
happen.
to me.
Yeah, I never went. Unfortunately, I grew up in a very rural environment where, like, we did a lot of camping. We never went to summer camp.
So your
but,
life was actually summer camp. Is what you're
yeah,
saying.
kind of. My parents in the summertime just went, go sit in the creek. Which is literally what we did. So we actually, interestingly enough, we had and my parents still live in the house I grew up in, right up the road, like a quick jaunty bike ride up the road, past just several pastures, is a very fairly well known. I don't even know if it's still open actually. YMCA camp called Camp Conaquee, and for those of you who are in the greater Pittsburgh area, it's where a bunch of like city kids that used to come out. So there'd be all these like kids from the city would come out and spend like weeks at Camp Conaquee, and it was right up the road from our house. And so me, my brother, like the neighborhood kids, we were like the Deliverance, creepy kids just sitting in the creek staring at them from the bank. Because we used to sit and swim and fish in the creek that went right along Camp Conaquee. So we'd see all these kids out there like in their, matching multicolored shirts, like it's fucking wild and crazy kids out there. And we would just be sitting in the creek like with a chaw and being like, wish we could go to summer camp. I guarantee you the other kids, when they went back to their bunks at night, thought like, are those kids going to come back and kill us tonight? So it was kind of a role reversal for me personally.
Great. So you understand most of the killers from these films.
Yeah, I do.
You probably were the ones making up the stories that then got to the camp.
Yeah.
And that scared the heck. And then you're the one tapping on their window.
Mm-hmm. I'm the one sticking a bloody knife in their door from the Discover in the Morning.
Right.
Hey,
I didn't say it. You did, bud.
Now, how did the counselors of these camps not come to you and hire you to come scare the kids for whatever spooky tales they were telling?
That is actually a great idea, because we would have done it in a goddamn second. Because we were very jealous that we couldn't go to camp, and like I said, there's all these kids, like I said, for us, we were like, man, these city kids coming out here and coming in our creek. I was
taking all our mud bugs.
All of you have straw in your mouth too.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, but I'm not kidding. There was definitely a time where I was just standing in the creek staring at them wearing just cut off jean shorts, and they were probably like, what the fuck is that?
You know what's funny though about this for me is that having a vivid imagination here, I just imagine you now as an adult doing that.
with a beer gut, just sticking my finger in my belly button. Like, you kids
start
having
throwing
fun in
beer
camp?
cans at them.
You kids got a s'more you might part ways with? Yeah, it's. I actually don't know. I think the camp's closed now. I'm not sure, but yeah, Camp Conaquee. Shout out to Camp Conaquee. All you Conaquineers? I don't know.
Conaquineers?
Don't know.
Not even going to it.
I don't know.
Conaquinescence?
I don't know. In any case, we're going to talk about camp slashers here. Before we jump in, we probably should mention at the top, because I'm definitely going to forget later. If you like the show, or if you just like spooky things and horror movies and all manner of macabre type of stuff, go over and head on to our social media. We've got at Halloween is Forever on Instagram, where that one's been up for a while. That's something I've been running for a couple of years. But then, in just the last few weeks, we started a Twitter account. Twitter, we're at Hallow Forever. We have Halloween is Forever Facebook page. And then if you got some questions, some comments, some concerns, some suggestions, reach out to us on any of those social media platforms, or shoot us a note at HalloweenIsForeverPod@gmail.com. Because like I said, we are going to be taking all of our suggestions for future episode topics from some of those platforms moving forward, right?
I think it's also fair to say that I think it'd be cool for the listeners to weigh in. we all choose a movie.
Oh,
and we
yes.
get to vote. You know, tell us if we made the right choice.
Mhm.
If the champion should keep their belt or not.
I like that. I like that idea. And if you don't know what we're talking about with a championship belt, again, go back and listen to the intro episode, or suffice to say, we're gonna have a fucking championship belt. A physical belt that we're going to carry around. I'm going to wear it to Giant Eagle. I'm definitely going to not be wearing a shirt. I'll mask up if need be.
Screaming where Eagle Video is the entire time.
Hey, I got my goddamn card. I got my membership card.
I'm here to rant.
I'm here to rant or buy.
Where's the chip chop ham?
Well, I know where the chip chop ham is. I know it is.
In your belly.
Yeah, it's all over my beer. It's
all of
it's
in his
beer.
belly button.
It's in your beer.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. Like I said, the topic is camp slashers. Like we said, we're not going to necessarily. We're not saying these are, well, maybe we are. I won't put words in anybody's mouth, but we are going to talk about individual films that, for whatever reason, left a lasting impression on us. So the first thing we're going to do, go around the horn here. That's another podcast term. In case you guys know, I'm a podcast pro. I know all the terminology.
I'm learning so much on this podcast.
We're going around the horn.
Oh
Going around the
God.
horn here. Going around the horn here, we're going to talk about our picks for camp slashers. Does anybody want to go first before we talk maybe a little about some beer pairings or something?
Do we
Anybody
do
want
not
to talk?
it? Is that the appropriate
Oh.
thing? Do we do not it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So, and for those of you who can't see us, which is everybody, Steve was last.
Steve
in
lost.
it.
Steve was taking a drink and Steve lost real quick.
Nice job drinking, jerk.
All right, so yeah, I'll go completely first, and I will introduce my film. The film I picked for this very first episode is Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight, which is from 2020, written and directed by Bartosz Kowalski, and then it's also starring a bunch of people with Polish names that I can't pronounce. If you want me to try, I will butcher them.
I would like just one, but the longest and most convoluted name.
Okay, so the longest and most convoluted one is actually belonging to the main star, and she plays Zofia Wolska, but her name in real life is Julia, and this is where it gets to a bunch of vowels. Vienna Anawa Narkezowicz.
Holy
That was
shit
7
balls.
syllables.
That's a tremendous amount of syllables. That's a tremendous amount of syllables. Yeah, and that's
It's a bunch.
a Polish film, right?
Yes. Yeah,
And a
so
new
everybody... It is a new one, and everybody has Polish names, and so they're all hard to pronounce, but you can watch it on Netflix with an English dub, so you can do that, or you can watch it subbed. It is billed as Poland's first slasher film, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I'm excited to talk about this one because saw it for the first time recently.
Yeah, I want to make a note too about the dubs, which was great, was that the dubs between the subtitles were not the same, and it was hilarious to me the entire time. Okay,
It's interesting. I'm eager to talk about that as well. Yeah, because that took me off guard. But you know what? Interesting pick, Steve. I'll say first of all, coming out of the gate, episode number 1, ballsy picking a film, a genre that is undeniably steeped in the 1980s and going straight 2020. First pick.
Right. I have reasons behind it.
But he's the filmmaker here, so he knows these things, so he can make these ballsy moves.
Yeah.
You and I, on the other hand, nope. We're going straight back to the 80s.
I was going to say, I hope you know I'm going to the 80s. And I am probably going to be the stand for the 80s friggin' schlocky garbage for most episodes, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll go next. I'll announce mine next. And again, exactly like Meg said, I'm extremely predictable. I'm going in the 80s. I'm going a classic of the genre. I don't think I went as predictable as I could have. I was between 3 movies.
No, I did that. I
ended up deciding... you didn't do Friday the 13th, though, right?
That's true.
That's to say. As long as you didn't pick something from the Friday franchise, and I actually, in the recent years, have come to appreciate this movie a lot more. But in any case, I went with a jaunty little flick from the year of our Lord, 1981, The Burning. If you've not seen it, we're going to get deep on The Burning. Have you both seen The Burning?
I had seen The Burning before. Yeah, we all have now, but I'd actually seen it before this. It was on a Prime Video, and I just kind of clicked on it.
Yeah.
And man, I got some thoughts about this thing.
It is a polarizing one, but I'm going to get ahead of myself.
No, I went in a virgin, so.
This is your first watch for The Burning?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but some of these movies I've seen, been watching since I was a kid. I probably didn't watch this movie for the first time until maybe like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
and this was only like the third time I've watched it. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Meg, what's your pick?
Well, I went with the 1983 classic Sleepaway Camp. Always a fun wild card to throw in there.
Yeah.
Directed by Robert Hiltzik. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
That's all right. He's a lawyer now. Don't worry.
I know. I was like, he ain't doing nothing. And it sounds like even subsequently he didn't really do anything besides the sequel. So I'm like, that's kind of cool and interesting. But even it seems like most of the cast really didn't do too much stuff.
Yeah.
They had careers, but nothing notable. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
It was the look on Angela's face that I think really did it for her.
Yeah, I am going. Yeah, and Felissa Rose. I'm for anybody who's been at like a convention anytime, where she's there, she's a blast. She's like the star of the show every time. She's the life of the party. She's rad, and she'll do the face. Even if you don't ask her, she's just awesome.
She just walks around the entire time doing the look.
Yeah, she does. She does. Every time you take a picture, she'll do it. She's a blast. But I would be lying if I said that was not one of the ones I strongly considered picking as well. I love that movie.
It was on a short list for me as well. It's just yeah. It is a classic, so it's going to be hard to defend ourselves, Brian, against it.
That's kind of what I was thinking. I'm prepared. I'm prepared to try.
I just go for the throw.
Just go straight for the jug. So before we jump into actually talking about our individual movies and why we love them so much and why they should reign supreme, let's talk a little bit about some potential beer pairings. As we talked about a little earlier and on the intro episode, we all touch the beer industry or work in the beer industry in some capacity. So we're all big beer nerds. So I thought it would be fun if we did a little kind of mini segment every episode where we talk about a beer that we feel would pair particularly well with the experience of watching our individual movies.
Dun, dun, dun.
Does anybody feel strongly about jumping in first with theirs?
I'm kind of happy with mine. I mean, I definitely had like a runner-up, but I wanted to go with something that just made me feel like I was at summer camp in a very cliche way.
It was the beer you used to chug at summer camp when you were a kid. The
summer camp that was in my mind when I was sitting in my room in the summertime to be all alone, not at summer camp.
When you were the summer camp chugging champ, this is what you chugged.
That's good. I went with Rainbow Sherbet by Prairie Artisan Ales because I was like, what do you look forward to? You're like always eating ice cream at the end of the night. My other option, I guess, is a runner-up, and was Evergreen Sorbetto, like one of the flavors that kind of was more... I was thinking one of the ones that would have blackberry in it, but it always has marshmallows. So I'm just always thinking, I'm like, ooh, campfire, but also summer and fruit kind of going together. And that was probably the best description as a brewer I could have ever said about that. But Rainbow Sherbet reigns supreme in my mind for my movie.
I like that. Yeah, I didn't. Why my head didn't go to marshmallow is dumb because that makes perfect sense. But yeah, it's a tasty one.
So it sounds like, Brian, that you picked something that wasn't marshmallow, so that means you definitely didn't pick any decadent ales.
No, I did not.
What did you pick then?
I picked a little beer that I actually tried for the first time not that long ago. A friend of mine from California, which who I trade beers with quite often, sent me, mostly what I asked him to send me is Enegren Brewing Company. If you're not familiar with Enegren, they do a ton of classic German styles, a little bit of Czech style stuff as well, but for the most part, really fantastic lager beers, traditionally brewed lager beers. And I had a beer recently from them called Blonde Fire, which is kind of their smoked Helles. And really super drinkable. There was kind of two I was picking up, that one or another smoked Helles I had recently. All of a sudden I'm super psyched because people were drinking and brewing smoked Helles, because I love smoked beers. And all of a sudden, and typically it's, kind of more traditional Rauch beer. It's like a Märzen or Bock beer base with smoked malts, right? So it's this big like loaf of bread in a glass, going really savory with it. But I've seen like 5 or 6 different smoked Helles and Kolsch beers in recent weeks, and these are two of the best ones I've had. The Enegren Blonde Fire or Notch Lost in the Dream. Notch Brewing is in Salem, Massachusetts. They started shipping to Pennsylvania during COVID, and I think I exclusively drank their beer for like 3 months.
I think I still have a few of theirs.
Yeah, their stuff is so good.
I do have to make a note that I feel like I love the name for Blonde Fire, and I feel like it should be my new nickname.
Blonde Fire, yeah.
Can we all agree on this?
The difference between the two beers is Notch is like it's decocted, it's richer, it's more. It almost reminds you of a bigger, kind of chewier, but it's still a pale lager. It's still sessionable. And then the smoke is much more pronounced. It's that like big, aggressive beechwood smoked, classic kind of Rauch beer type of thing. The Blonde Fire is much more subtle. It's almost, it's definitely a pronounced smoke character, but it's one of those ones where like after half a pint, you almost forget it's a smoked beer a little bit, which is just, so when I think, smoked beer, especially like lightly smoked beer, I'm thinking about like the scent of smoke on your clothes after a bonfire, at I guess a summer camp. I don't know. In any case, those are the ones I went with.
Right on. For me, I simply went Tiske. It's
you went Polish. You went straight up Polish with it. Nice.
Yeah, it's Tiske, the standard Polish Pilsner, the light beer. You're not going to find too many surprises with it. It's not going to be too out of anybody's wheelhouse, and it's kind of a standard bearer as far as I know when it comes to like importing into other countries. I know it gets around. So yeah, I feel like that represents my film pretty well, being that it's the first slasher film. There's nothing too surprising about the film, but you can sit down with a Tiske and enjoy it with Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. I
actually have a lot of fond memories of that beer because I worked for Miller Brewing for like 7 years, and they imported Tiske to the U.S. And there's a big, giant, really awesome, really fun Polish festival in Milwaukee. When I lived in Milwaukee, at the Milwaukee Fairgrounds, where like Summerfest and everything is, like the big music festival there. And my wife's my mother-in-law's family is super Polish, and she would come up and we take the kids and go and my wife and her and our kids will walk around and drink a bunch of beer and take the kids on rides and stuff like that. So when it's fresh, man, it's a great beer. Great beer.
I never had it fresh.
That's the problem. And that brings us to the problem. It's never ever fresh.
Never had it fresh.
In any case, some lovely beer pairings. So if you're thinking about going out and checking out these slicks, before we jump into talking about them,
pause your episode.
I guess spoiler alert, because we're definitely going to spoil the shit out of this. Maybe just pause now, go watch 3 movies back to back to back, drink all 3 of the beers, then come back, then listen to us talk about them. But
I feel like we're just presuming that no one who's listening probably has a life, which might be accurate.
Do we have any beers that we're consuming now that we want to talk about?
I would love to talk about how much I love Wayfinder. I just took a trip to Oregon, and I was in Portland, and one of my favorite places to go is Wayfinder. Kind of similar, like how you use is it Enegren. Like they make a lot of nice traditional lager style beers. Very and they're so clean and crisp, and you can just super crushable, and just meeting them and knowing like the thought and the quality that goes into it is really cool. But I feel like the metalhead in me is just like loves all of their artwork and all of their collabs with like metal artists they do. So I'm drinking their Collapse Kolsch style ale.
Little Kolshy boy.
Little Kolshy boy.
Nice. Steve, what are you drinking this evening?
Well, all my beer's gone. But earlier, I was drinking Rusty Rail Strange Love, which was a key lime kind of golden ale. For just a basic breakdown, it seems like a golden ale with lactose and key lime. Kind of desserty. It's pretty good. Earlier in the day, though, for lunch, I had a Burial Surf Wax IPA.
Ooh.
And yes, that's a good beer.
I went with I don't know if that's is that a hazy one?
I was just drinking out of the can. I didn't check.
I can't remember. I've had a couple of their beers, but I don't know. I don't know which of their IPs I've had, but I've generally felt good about it.
Yeah, a lot of Burial is unfiltered, but they're not like soft.
Yeah.
When it comes to flavor,
Gotcha. I'm going kind of old school here. I'm going with the Straw Amber. I'm going with a little 0.3 liter. I got the Dovetail 0.3 liter. I've been affectionately referring to the 0.3 liter glasses as little cuties. trying to get that to stick. So I got a little
cute pints. Little cute pints.
I got a little cutie of Straw Amber here.
And every sip, you're gonna start talking more like a Yinzer.
Oh yeah. We already talked about Eagle Video at least once tonight, so
yeah,
let's go down. I think we've exhausted our beer talk for the time being. Let's jump into these frickin' movies, you guys. So we've already talked a little bit ahead of time. And I drew the short straw, so I'm going to go first. And I'm going to talk a little bit about The Burning. So like I said, 1981. This is one of those movies that came out in the, there was a million of them that came out in like 1980 to 1982, which were all just, let's capitalize on this new genre, right? 78, Halloween came out, and everyone was like, just holy shit, let's slam as many slasher movies into theaters and onto VHS and Betamax and Laserdisc and whatever other formats are out there for the next 10 years and try to make a buck off of them. I'd say this probably falls into that category, although and I'll get into it a little bit more. I think this one stands above the rest for a handful of reasons, and you may disagree with. You're probably going to disagree with me, but the first thing I'll talk a little bit about is the director, Tony Maylan. So, name did not ring a bell. I talked about, this was a movie that, the Friday the 13th franchise, Sleepaway Camp. Like, I've been watching these movies since high school, if not since, I was 10 or 12 years old, right? This movie, it was always kind of in the subconscious. I'd seen it in magazines and on, I remember in college seeing it on, like, somebody post something about it on MySpace and trying to find it. And I could not find a physical copy of it. And obviously we didn't have, access to streaming and stuff like that. So I knew about it for honestly probably more than that, probably 8-9 years before I actually saw it. So I've only seen it in the last 5 years, but I probably watched it 3 times since then. And so first time I actually looked up the director, not someone I was very familiar with. He hasn't done a lot. He's done a lot of like documentaries and things like that. But then I'm scrolling down through, and he did do a movie that I coincidentally popped on while I was working from home, sitting at my computer staring at email all day, and I popped it on in the background and ended up kind of getting sucked into it. He did a movie in 1992 called Split Second. Have either of you seen Split Second?
I have not.
No.
Yeah, so it's a Rucker Hauer vehicle. It stars Rucker Hauer and Kim Cattrall, believe it or not. Poor Kim Cattrall, she's fantastic at it. They give her absolutely nothing to do. She's wasted in the movie. She does some cool stuff, but they just don't give her anything cool to do with her character. But Rucker Hauer, it's this like hard-boiled futurist, or I guess dystopian future, hard-boiled buddy cop movie that has like a horror element to it. It's bizarre. They're like in the future, wearing, Rutger Hauer is, first of all, this is how 1990 fucking 2 this movie is. His character in the movie is Detective Harley Stone. And I'm like, what? Couldn't be on, like, you might as well have named him like Officer Fingerless Gloves. Like, he's literally the most fucking 1992 cop I've ever seen. He's got like a duster jacket on. They're just walking through dystopian, clubs and punching people, and everything's wet. It's a very strange movie. Anyway,
so wait a minute. Did you just watch Bargain Bin Blade Runner? Is this what you're telling us?
It is kind of. It's like it's Dollar General Blade Runner a little bit, okay. Except for there's like a weird like ghost demon monster that murders people. Like, he's investigating a serial killer, but the serial killer ends up being like this it's a supernatural thing. It's wild. It's definitely worth a watch, honestly. I mean, Rutger Hauer, he's got some great lines. He's that classic like hard-boiled cop who's like, I don't eat healthy and I drink hard and I wear a duster jacket, It's fantastic. It's definitely worth checking out. In any case, so that's the only other thing I've seen from this director. But here's where we get into the meat and potatoes here. The 2 stars, or a handful of stars. It's a fairly big cast. A gentleman named Brian Matthews as Todd. Todd's kind of one of the 2 kind of big heroes of the movie, I guess. He hasn't done a lot else. He's in a lot of soap operas in the 80s, I think. He was in, I don't know if it was All My Children or Bold and the Beautiful or something like that, but he was a big soap star in the 80s. Leah Ayres, I believe is how you pronounce it, is Michelle. You would know her perhaps from Bloodsport. If you saw her, she's in Bloodsport. She also did a run that I remember her from on Walker, Texas Ranger. Because, like I said, we lived that show when we were little. I mean, me and my brother were roundhousing each other all fucking day. There's a guy named Brian Backer who plays Alfred, who's kind of the nerdy creep kid who ends up being a hero at the end. He's the one who's like, he's spying on girls in the shower, and they're like, you're just trying to scare them. That kid, little creepy, more than a little creepy. He was the Rat. What was his name? Mark the Ratner or something in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. There's a bunch of people you'll recognize in this movie. And then, of course, the screen debut of Mr. Jason Alexander as Dave. So I was referring to this movie as The Burning, a.k.a. The Summer of George, a.k.a. Camp 0 to fucking 60, because this thing just goes absolutely. Oh, and also the screen debut of Holly Hunter as well. Holly Hunter from The Piano, Broadcast News. She's in The Incredibles. I remember her most as opposite the great Nick Cage as Ed in Raising Arizona. But she's fantastic. She didn't get much screen time. I don't even know if she has a line, but this was also Holly Hunter's screen debut, which I found pretty interesting. So one of the things I love about this movie, they take the lore from kind of a real life type scenario, right? So Cropsey is kind of the villain in the film, right? So long story, I guess I should probably take a quick moment to read the IMDb synopsis here, because it does a pretty concise job, probably better than I would. A former summer camp caretaker, horribly burned from a prank gone wrong, lurks around an upstate New York camp, bent on killing the teenagers responsible for his disfigurement. They're basically, he's this like alcoholic, abusive caretaker of this camp, who roughs up one of the campers or counselors. They never really specify, and he's just like just very much an asshole. Nobody likes him. So this bunk of campers decides they're going to play a trick on him, where they take I don't know where they got like a movie quality. It's like it came off a fucking Fulci set. Like they literally took this like looks like a human skull with worms and blood and fire, and just put it in his bedroom in the Cropsey. You know, he's passed out drunk. They sneak into his camp. He's the camp caretaker. They put it on his on beside his bed, and then they tap on the glass until he wakes up. Again, you think, oh, you put a snake or a spider or something. No, it's like a movie level prop. I don't know where the fuck. So
Craft Day was a lot.
I feel like I definitely saw something like that at Michael's that I definitely would have bought as home decor for my life.
It was intense. It literally looked like it was off a Fulci set. Like you later, again, spoiler alerts abound here, but you later find out that Todd, one of the counselors who's kind of like the hero, is one of the kids who played the trick that resulted in Cropsey getting burned, and Cropsey's back for revenge, blah, blah, blah. Tom Savini does the effects in this movie, which is one of the big reasons why it's so fantastic and lends so much kind of gravity and stakes to the movie. But that prop that they put in there was so intense that I almost was like, do they later come back and learn that another one of the campers in that bunk was a young Tom Savini that put that fucking piece together and scared the shit out of Cropsey? Anyway, Cropsey wakes up, sees this gnarly ass, like bloody, burning, wormy skull, flops it onto his lap on his bed.
He's
Apparently
come on over here.
Come on, snuggle up with me. Apparently his bed is just, his sheets are polyester soaked in fucking kerosene because they go up like immediately. His legs are on fire. He's panicking. And then, Cropsey's longtime habit of sleeping just surrounded by accelerants comes back to haunt him.
He had gasoline in his bunk. For sure.
An open gas can right beside his bed.
Let me just pour this all over me.
Cropsey like the huff. What's the matter?
That's what I'm saying. Is Cropsey huffing gas, or does he just wake up in the middle of the night and like, I just need to take a little swig of gas?
He's like the Charlie Kelly of summer camps, like.
Yeah.
Those kids invaded his angry room and then set him on fire.
Oh my God, yeah. And of course he gets up and old bumblebutt Cropsey goes and kicks over the kerosene can, and all of a sudden he's a fucking fireball, right? So he runs out of the room, jumps in the water, blah, blah, blah. So the interesting thing is they took the name Cropsey, but Cropsey was not only a real life urban legend. It's kind of an oxymoron, but you get the idea. Like in real life, this was an urban legend in the 70s and 80s in Staten Island, New York. But then oddly enough, it ultimately came true. So there's the urban legend is around, hey, there's this guy. He was a patient at Willowbrook Mental Institution, which is, I guess, on Staten Island. The institution shut down, and he's just left to his own devices, and he lives in the woods and he abducts kids and kills people and blah blah blah, right? Standard urban legend stuff. But then this guy who everyone called Cropsey, and he was like, he's Cropsey, this guy named Andre Rand, which wasn't his birth name, and I could not find out why this guy changed his name. Nobody knows why. In any case, he eventually was convicted of kidnapping and first-degree murder. Like he literally kidnapped people and ultimately murdered, I think, 2 people, at least convicted of at least 1 first-degree murder. So it was like a weird true crime story that was, inextricably linked to this urban legend, and they took that name and like plopped it into the movie, which was kind of weird. So it almost had this weird mythos already built into it in a weird way. But in any case, so that I thought that was a pretty interesting approach. Getting down to like why I absolutely love this movie. First of all, I think of this as like the platonic ideal of a camp slasher movie for a lot of reasons. And I was kind of between Sleepaway Camp, Madman, which I love too, and this one. And a couple of things. It has all the elements, right? I love the fact that there's a killer in the woods, crazy, deformed monster killer guy, right? He's not He's got a backstory. They actually go into it a lot more than they necessarily need to, but it's not a whodunit. It's not a, hey, is somebody in cahoots with him? It's like, no, there's a fucking monster in the woods. He's going to come fucking kill you. Like that's the whole idea, right? And then there's this weird element of realism, and they kind of take care of some loose ends in the movie that they don't necessarily need to. So, like, for example, first of all, right off the bat, you could say, he gets set on fire, he jumps in the lake. Very easily could have just been like, hey, never heard from again. Now he's creeping out in the woods. Well, actually, they go the length to go like, no, they called an ambulance. They took him to the hospital. He was in a burn ward for months and months and in rehabilitation for years. And they even go back to like him getting let out onto the street. And apparently they handed him a trench coat and were like, go into Manhattan. And then he was in Manhattan.
Here's a few
like,
dollars. Get yourself a lady.
He literally so this scene, not only does it like tie up that kind of loose end that I think a lot of other movies just would not have even bothered with, but also they take this opportunity to raise the stakes and like set expectations as far as like there's some shit that's going to happen in this movie. Like the stakes are high. Cropsey, again, he's got a trench coat. I mean, I guess if I look like Cropsey, I'd probably have a trench coat as well. But he's in what I assume is Manhattan. It just looks like the setting for like Basket Case or something. And he's with a sex worker, go up to the room, blah, blah, blah. He kills her in a fairly brutal scene that I can only describe as like reminiscent of something like Prowler or something like that, where it's like the movie's okay, but the kills are so brutal that it raises the stakes to a higher level. And this is 100% Tom Savini, right? So right off the bat, you're kind of told you can't trust this fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like a lot of other horror movies and slasher movies in particular, you kind of know what you're going to get, right? A few minutes in, you're like, you can see where the budget restrictions are. You can see where the script, is going to fall short or the performance is going to fall short. And you're like, yeah, it's not going to. I can turn away. I don't have to take this very seriously. Nothing serious is going to happen. This one sets the expectations right off the bat that like you're in for some shit. And then right after that, it's like 35, 40 minutes where it's like, am I watching Meatballs? Like this is just a silly, sleazy camp movie. You know what I mean? A camp, of course, that is inhabited almost exclusively with future sex criminals. Like these fucking guys are ultra aggressive.
Yeah, Brian, your movie's full of perverts.
It is. So this is a problematic part of it. There's a lot of very aggressive dudes doing very aggressive dude stuff. With their fellow campers. Like there's no way around it. This is a fucking sleazy ass movie.
Dude stuff.
Yeah, it's super sleazy ass movie. Like I'm definitely not gonna paint that in any positive light or anything like that. But for 30, 40 minutes you kind of get lured into this false sense of security a little bit. And then you're like, oh, am I watching Meatballs or something? And then all of a sudden you're fucking not again. You know what I mean? And then you get to the canoe scene, which is one of my favorite scenes of all time. Do you guys remember what I'm talking about when I say the canoe scene? Mm-hmm. So for those of you who haven't seen it, I would strongly urge you to watch it. But, not going to explain the whole plot, but a bunch of shit goes down, right? And they lose the canoes. So they split up, and a small group goes to, take their canoes back to go find the canoes. They end up building a raft. So they're paddling back towards camp on this raft, and they see one of their lost canoes, and they paddle up to it. And the first time I watched this, which again, not that long ago, they had just one of the counselors, I think her name was Karen, had just been killed in a not terrifically brutal, but like fairly brutal scene. And then they go up to the canoe, and what you assume is going to happen, and what any other slasher movie has told you, is Karen's body is going to be in the canoe, and they're going to freak out. they're gonna all of a sudden shit's turned on. Now we're scared. Now we're looking over our shoulder. Now we know there's a murderer on the loose, and now the plot's gonna, speed up in the last act. Wrong. Cropsy jumps out of this fucking canoe in broad daylight and takes his garden shears to these kids in the most brutal way. The one kid gets his fingers cut off. He slashes another girl literally right across the forehead. Like, it's absolutely fucking brutal and fast paced, and like the performances by the victims are super convincing. I mean, the practical effects they had to do this in a very short amount of time, and later when you get to Cropsy's face is not incredible. I mean, he's burnt, you know what I mean? It's fine. But Tom Savini, I've read and heard in interviews where he was like, yeah, I had like 2 days to do that. So like, again, it's just like the canoe scene is absolutely fucking brutal. And then the aftermath after the canoe scene where they, heading back and all this stuff. Long story short, they get back to camp, the few survivors. And even when they get back together with the counselors, they don't just go like, okay, everyone died. All right. A lot of slasher movies will be like, hey, our friends are all dead. Let's also still fuck. Like, you know what I mean? It's just not like, no, like it's just usually there's not a lot of like phasing them. They show the kids like panicking, crying, shaking. Like it's very, very effective. So the fact that this movie just like takes it to 11, then lures you into false sense of security, and then punches you right in the fucking gut again later on, is probably the thing I love the most about it. Also, the character of Glazer. Do you remember what I'm talking about? I'm talking about Glazer.
Yeah, the guy who wasn't good enough for the outsiders.
Glazer. I call him Soda Pop, but in the movie it's Glazer. So he definitely, you're right. He definitely looks like, I was going to say, that's a better way of describing him. I was going to say he looks like because he's so fucking greasy. I mean, he's maybe the greasiest human being I've ever seen. He looks like he just got done being incubated inside a Bruce Springsteen song, and then he was dumped out on the shores of this camp. But yeah, you're right. He looks like an extra from The Outsiders as well. But his voice, just his mannerisms, like, hey, ladies, you look like a bunch of fucking mermaids, or whatever he says.
Hey, pretty lady. Give me a kiss.
Hey, you guys reading girly magazines? What a bunch of losers.
Steve, you're just doing John Travolta, and you're not far off. You are honestly not far off. He is. He seems like, he's like a greaser. He's John Travolta from Grease a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
And then it's my favorite part of his character was at some point he has this girl that he's chasing and being very aggressive with, and her name's Sally. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to make it with her, and she's telling him no, and he goes, "Oh, come on, it's gonna be good." and then it's not
at all.
I promise it's gonna be so good.
Oh, is that it? I just remember that line. I was like, what?
She emasculates him so hard. It might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie. Oh, she's like, yeah, I'm cold. You didn't do shit to warm me up or something. Like, she says something. Yeah. She's like, Glazer, you're a punk bitch, is basically what she says to him immediately post-coitus. I thought that was fantastic. And then he's like, I'm going to go get some wood for the fire. And then he runs off.
Don't worry, round 2 will be better.
He does say that. I promise it's going to be better the second time.
But it's not.
Yeah, because he gets stabbed in the throat with shears. So that's my, I guess, my general argument for...
That was a general argument? That was
no, it's not general. I'm nothing if not verbose. Questions, comments, concerns, lay it on me.
Your movie is full of perverts that are unlikable. The only likable character is Dave, and then the women who are victims.
Dave's not likable at all. Dave is an absolute fucking asshole.
I like Dave.
I know, he is funny because he's George, right?
I guess maybe I like Dave because he's not trying to rape. He's not...
He's not, but
he's not saying, as rapey as the rest.
He's not as rapey. No, I have been very upfront. This movie is absolutely fucking sleazy as hell. Dave at one point goes like something about all I remember. The only line that I could actually quote from Jason Alexander's characters, he says something about, "Hey, don't forget the spermicide," or something like that. Too. Like in the mess hall, you're just like, you are nauseating.
So
but
I wonder how it felt to like have to say those lines. Like, was there any consciousness there? Like, no, this is just what we do. We're not real humans.
It's very like, yeah, it is. So it I was gonna save this a little bit for later. I'm outing myself a little bit here. This is the one thing that is my hesitancy about this movie, and I did not even realize it until I brought it up and committed to talking about it, is one Mr. Harvey Weinstein does have a writing credit on this movie. And this is one of, if not the first, like movie that kind of like kicked off Miramax, I think, or had some, if I'm not mistaken. So
it at least put money in his pocket to keep going.
So when you think about some of the attitude towards women of these campers, all of a sudden, you know, you can kind of be like, hey, this movie's 40 years old. It's fucking sleazy camp, you know, movie, whatever. And then you're like, now I'm seeing it through kind of a weird light with the Harvey Weinstein thing. But overall, the performances are pretty killer. Yeah, the dialogue, again, at times is cringy.
But so like some of my takeaways were like, you know, obviously I'm doing this slightly in comparison to like Sleepaway Camp, and I will give it credit to that the dialogue's slightly better than Sleepaway Camp. You know, it definitely has its thing. But like what I think. So, like, the killing didn't really happen until much later. You know, the official, I would say, like, okay, now our climax, we're coming and everyone's gonna fucking die. It didn't happen until later, but I still felt like there was this always, like, tension going on through the movie that you felt. And I thought they did a good job with that. However, it was because they always like built up these moments, but it was like something else.
Yeah, they did the old Vaseline smeared on the lens, you know, thing when it was good looking through Cropsy's eyes. I'm pretty sure that's like how they get that like effect on the camera. But in any case, there was a couple times where like, oh, Cropsy's sneaking into the bunk to kill, what is it, Woodstock or whatever his name is, and then now it's just. You know, it's just Todd or whatever, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I love that, yeah, you kept waiting for the other shoe to drop.
I know. I mean, I kept on waiting for the gore. Like, I kind of, you know, I think, like, some, like, movies that fall in this category, like, typically, like, we're going to do it throughout the whole thing, and you're just going to kind of get one and get another, then we're going to have a bunch of them happening, and then it's going to be over. Whereas, like I said, like, you know, we have the initial kill, and then now we're back at camp, and it's just a lot of weird shits happening. That, you know,
a lot of spermicide talk.
A lot of, you know...
A lot of talking about
peeping
rubbers.
Toms and a whole nine. Yeah. I still feel like it created... Because, like, the scene where the one character, she was in the shower, was, like, one of the campers, and you're like, oh, my God, Cropsy's gonna get her. Like, that in my mind, I'm like, no, here it is. And no, it's... What's his fucking
Alfred
name?
the incel.
It's Alfred. It's Alfred the incel. Yeah, I'm just trying to scare her. I absolutely fucking. That's one thing I wanted Alfred to die. Like I'm rooting for Alfred, and they kind of tried to create Alfred as this like sympathetic character a little bit. Like he's an outcast,
the underdog a little bit. But he's still an asshole.
Dude, if you start the movie by being a peeping Tom. You're not going to win. You're not going to get back into my good graces just from going like the peeking on me. So.
And they even pointed out because he's being the peeping Tom on the girl Sally, who is Glazer's girlfriend of sorts. So he's trying to get at her to get at Glazer.
Is that how you took it?
Yeah, that's what he was saying the whole time. He's like, I just want to get back at him.
Yeah. Like the other women in the cabin bring it up as like, well, why? So he's got to bully her to get at him.
Yeah. I do remember that line now that you say that. I do remember that line where they're all sitting around and the one, which is maybe my favorite character, Tiger. She's the
Tiger who lost her way to the Bad News Bears.
Yeah, she really, and she's the one who goes and finds the softball in the woods. She's also like seems to be 11 years old smoking a cigarette. Like, in the,
Yeah.
She seems very mature at her age.
yeah. But so that's my story. I'm sticking to it. It's not a perfect movie, but I like the danger element. I like the high stakes. I think the effects are awesome, especially for what they were working with time wise. I like the pace. I like set expectations. We're gonna fuck you up. Maybe we're not. No, we're definitely gonna fuck you up. Like that's kind of my.
I definitely will give the effects like the A+, because like all of the practical effects that go on, because I mean it basically has to be practical in the 80s. Mm-hmm. But then you start the movie with a full body burn, and then end the movie with another full body burn.
Yeah.
I don't know if there was anybody in the second one at the end.
No,
it might have just been a dummy.
At that point, he had shears in the back of the neck from Alfred. Mm-hmm. Todd stuck an axe in his face, and then they set him on fire. So I don't think. The first one, I saw like reviews and people were like, "Oh, the burn at the beginning, you can see the fire suit and the mask so much." I'm like, it was like
you can see 20, him in all of them.
Yeah, it was like a 20-second burn. Like you have to. Like that was a serious. Every time I see one like that, especially one that runs long like that, it makes me so nervous because I've heard so many horror stories of people who have gotten like stunt people who've gotten seriously disfigured, like Kane Hodder, or whatever. These people who have like literally had like really serious injuries as a result of these burn scenes, and like so it always. I'm a sucker for a good burn scene.
Yeah, they're always good. I always like a good one.
All right, I think I've exhausted my argument. Who's feeling froggy?
I mean, I can go, but if Meg, you want to go ahead.
I'll just go to get mine out of the way. Not to say. I just want to get this over with. I definitely appreciate like how in depth, and I'm just like, oh, am I not going to do this justice? But like my opening comment about Sleepaway Camp is the word timeless. I feel like to a certain extent, like you could always come back to and you still kind of get the same excitement or even just like, I don't know, surprise of it all. But if we want to kind of go through it, revisit that Robert Hiltzik came out in 1983. Like I said, like with this movie, his work, he really didn't do anything until he did the sequel. And I did see that Felissa Rose did like a documentary type thing on this movie too. And we'll start it off with the IMDb synopsis. So we have Angela Baker, a shy, traumatized young girl, is sent to summer camp with her cousin. Shortly after her arrival, anyone with sinister or less than honorable intention gets their comeuppance.
They sure as hell do. Comeuppance would be not how I would describe necessarily the things that happen to these people. That's putting it mildly.
Yeah, but I feel like even this movie opens with, I don't know, when you're looking at it, I think especially now, people our age, like you look at movies from the 80s and you're like, oh my God, every ounce of this is so corny. But so you kind of find, I think, a little bit of humor even with the gore that goes along with it. So we have this opening scene, two campers, farting around on a boat. Yeah, I'm using farting a lot.
We're just farting around.
Farting around with a girl on some skis, and one thing leads to another. They're just no longer paying attention, which I think is like one of the best reasons. You're just like, just look forward. Just look straight.
I also love how easily the guy's convinced too. He's like, let me drive. And he's like, my dad lets me drive. Because your dad going to help me find a new job. And
yeah. And then all of a sudden he's just like, okay.
Her answer is, cut me. I forget. It's not cut me a break, but it's like, oh, come on. And he's like, all right. Like he just gets convinced so easily.
Right. And so a couple of the things. So we obviously know, I mean, if anyone hasn't watched this then, so we now have John and his partner Lenny bring John's children to the lake, and they're farting around on their sailboat now. Again, all the farting around.
Yeah, people are farting around a lot. I mean, that's undeniable. This movie's notorious for all the farting around.
Yeah. So we have John and his two children in the water, and this boat heading towards them with no one paying attention. But what I appreciate and kind of found very hilarious every time I watch it is that so the people driving the boat heading towards Jonna's kids are just like super calm. We have the girl on the skis who's freaking the fuck out, like turn, blow, and that does not stop. So like everyone's dynamic,
and she's sitting in totally still water, by the way.
She's actually probably just sitting in a barrel or something like that. And then what? I don't know if you guys remember, like when the boat first hits John, his partner Lenny's just like, John. And that's
it's
all
like melodrama. There's a little bit of melodrama, yeah. Those two kids, like, which are, I guess it's Ricky and Angela, right?
No, yeah. Peter and Angela.
No.
Peter.
No, it's not Ricky.
Ricky's the cousin. Ricky's the cousin.
It's Pete and Angela.
It's Pete and Angela, that's right. They remind me of Michael Corleone's kids in Godfather Part 2, where they're just like straight face, afraid to talk.
Yeah.
Their accents are so heavy, too.
Oh, my gosh. That little girl, she's like 4 years old. She sounds like fucking Joan Rivers. Yeah,
and they're both like, hey, Daddy, do you think one day we'll go to the camp like the big kids? And it's like, holy hell, these are some real New Yorker kids. Yeah, but then, like, John and Lenny don't sound like that. So where the hell did they get that from?
People in New York are the only people who ever really went to summer camp, if you don't know that already.
Pretty much.
I know. Oh, my God. I pointed out. So I watched this recently, this past week, and it was the first time my wife had ever seen it. And she was like, why the fuck are those kids talking like that? I'm like, I'm sure they didn't go to voice coaches. They probably talk like that's exactly how they talk in their everyday life.
Yeah. So we have now, we are under the assumption that John and Peter are dead. And so Angela goes to live with Aunt Martha.
Oh, Aunt Martha.
Aunt Martha is a character and a half. And what I love about this whole movie is like, you always kind of have this suspicion of something. You're like, okay, is it a time period thing that Aunt Martha is so weird, or is she just really a little cuckoo in the head? And it obviously comes together for us. So she is now sending off Angela and Ricky to the summer camp. And I kind of...
Do you know she actually passed away this week, that actress?
Oh, I didn't know that. R.I.P.
Yeah, Desiree Gould.
Desiree Gould. She literally passed away this week.
I weirdly wanted to do a TikTok joke, and that was probably the worst thing. I probably could have even had the thought in my mind. So anywho, so we have Ricky and Angela. We're going to summer camp. We're doing our thing. And instantly, Angela's super shy. She's super quiet. She's like clearly traumatized from going back to camp, which is also like, we don't really set up why does she want to go back to camp? Why is it all of a sudden 8 years later, she's like, I think I'm ready to kill a bunch of people, or something like.
It's like Michael Myers, it's just like however many years later the
she's
clock.
Not an adult.
No, it's not. No,
so,
there's no rush there.
We learn Angela and Ricky's dynamic. Ricky is clearly someone who just like sticks up for his cousin. He gets it in more ways than one. That was awkward to say that way. Yeah, so Angela gets picked on the whole time because she's super quiet, super, super shy. And so we go through that, and I'm trying to think, and then we have our first murder.
Mm-hmm.
We're, I think in this beginning, we're like kind of just setting it up and getting to know the characters. We're getting to know all the creeps that work at this summer camp, like Artie and Mel, and then we get to know the bitches like Meg and Judy. We're learning all of it.
Don't you dare talk shit on my sweet, sweet Judy. She is an icon. She is the love of my life. And I swear to Christ, if I hear you badmouth Judy.
Ooh.
Judy is a shit.
I fucking love Judy. Kills me. I fucking love Judy.
I just like her character just cracked me up because I'm like, you see throughout all of her scenes like how she just pauses and she's like, I know how I can be a bitch here. I'm gonna flip the hair and I'm gonna say something super C-word. I want to say something, but I'm like, yeah, she knows what she's doing. It's great.
I love this the dialogue between her and Ricky. I could listen to an audiobook that's just her and Ricky just going. Well, my favorite one I wrote it down is Ricky goes, "You're a real scumbag, Judy. And Judy goes, "Fuck you!" And just the way she says "fuck you," just like, she nails it. She is one of the greatest movie villains of all time, in my mind. I fucking love Judy.
Yeah, no, she's wonderful in it. And Judy's death is actually one of my favorites throughout the movie. So we slowly start having our deaths happen. We have Artie, the creepy cook. He gets burned with water, which we don't technically know if he dies, but he gets real fucked up. Because he was trying to molest fucking Angela.
Yeah, they set him up right off the bat.
I wanted him dead the moment I heard his voice. You see my face right now?
He's about the loudest pedophile I've ever heard.
Yeah, oh my God, he's so brazen.
Yeah.
He literally,
he's sitting,
he's sitting there outside when all the kids are going there, and the shit he's saying is wild.
It's not that they're not old enough. It's just, or not that you're too old. It's just they're. What he said something. I'm trying to remember the line because it was just like, I actually might have a note. I'm gonna pull it up.
I do know the word baldies is thrown around, which really makes me squirm in my seat. But do you know that
wildly uncomfortable?
Oh no, I have the quote. I totally wrote it down. It's like my note says "creepy chef." Mind you, it says no such thing as being too young. You're too old. I was just like, what?
Do you know the guy he's talking to? The guy who takes over as the chef after him? Do you know who that is?
James Earl Jones' brother?
Father, I think.
A father?
Okay. Father?
I thought they were, yeah.
Is it brother? I thought related. I believe it's James Earl Jones' father.
Oh, wow.
And I'm pretty sure this was the year, whatever year was this, one of the Star Wars movies came 83. Out this year. Which one of the Star Wars franchise, like the original trilogy, came out in 83? Was it?
I think that would have been Empire.
Yeah, which I think is anyway, it's so funny that he was in this movie that year and his son was the voice of Darth Vader.
Right.
Talk about the dissonance between that. Like,
I could kind of see it. I feel like now that you pointed out, I'm like, I could see certain characteristics, like in
his voice, man.
Yeah, it's all in the voice.
His voice is so similar.
He's the father of James Earl, so it's Robert Earl Jones, and he's the father of James Earl Jones.
Nice.
There you go. I think I heard that recently. Yeah.
Fun facts. We're dropping them. Yeah. So I like, this one I feel like, in comparison to say the burning, it's like we start having our deaths throughout the whole time. I feel like something happens, like Angela gets affected. And that's the other thing is like, obviously you don't know Angela is the killer until technically the end, but you kind of know. You're like, it's either her or Ricky, and there's no one else really that makes sense here. Or it's one of the dead people who aren't really dead and they just have somehow been hiding out, but why would they do that? So, we have this going on and you kind of see this like pattern. You're like, something shitty happens to Angela and then someone ends up dead and you're like, cool, all right.
I guess the other possibility was it could have been Aunt Martha.
Sure.
Who was watching over the kids.
Yeah. That's also true.
I remember reading, when I watched this movie for the first time in college, I remember reading like theories about it and stuff and there was the most theories were about Aunt Martha and that, or that Ricky was doing some of the killings, or Ricky was in on some of the killings, or Aunt Martha was in the killings. And I think a lot of those rumors like came from the fact that they didn't use Angela's hands in the, when they just show the hands. I'm pretty sure it's Ricky's hands they use, which is also, kind of.
If you remember, like when Judy's getting killed, that was like the first time you see any sort of figure, like full figure. And I feel like the one thing that I notice about it is that, like the hair. You're like, that doesn't look like Angela's hair. It looks like a shorter, like boy haircut from the 80s that was slightly mullet-like. And
the closest you get before that is when Kenny is under the canoe.
Yeah, and you just see the head above water kind of thing.
Yeah, but it stops like way before its shoulders, so you can't tell if it's long hair or short hair or anything.
Yeah.
And it's wet, so obviously.
Yeah, so talking about the death of Judy, I have to point out, out of any of the deaths, because I think everything else was pretty standard, like nothing really jumps out at you about that, but then all of a sudden we have Judy, and we have this beautiful, like, silhouette from the light shining in, and then we have these hands coming up, so it becomes, like, I feel like almost more of an epic death, but then, if you understand curling irons, you're a bit triggered because you know the moment that you burnt your head one time and you would never do that again. So you see that and you see that wand come down and you're like, oh, that was probably the worst death, worse than being stabbed in the back.
Well, and forget if I'm wrong in this, she's stabbed in a very vulnerable place. Am I wrong? Am I wrong in saying that?
It's kind of insinuated there.
Is it not insinuated that that's what happens with the curling iron?
Something like that. I mean, I don't know how else you could try to, I mean, we can even talk about like this, like, how could you kill someone? I mean, granted, getting burned would suck.
Yeah.
You don't see the aftermath, but it definitely insinuates that it's going in places that would probably not feel very comfortable.
Yeah. I again, never used a curling iron. Still squirming the second I see that. Like, that is a
after this, just
it's
go
all
talk
in
to your
silhouette.
wife. Yeah, she'll be like, "Yep, nope, that's the worst."
She fell asleep before that part, and I was happy because I knew she would just be like, "This is it. Fucking, I'm out on this one." But
I kind of liked how artistic in a way it was like the only death, and it's odd to like talk about like deaths in a horror movie being super artistic, but I feel like it did stick out to me that I'm like, oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a brutal one.
So the other things that really like stick out to me as interesting and like things that they start tackling, and it's almost one of these things that I'm like, I wish I was in the writing room for this, because I think like when you initially watch it, when Angela first kisses, and I'm forgetting the other Ricky's friend's name. Do you guys remember?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, it's escaping me right now.
I don't know. Okay, anyway, so she starts hanging out with one of the other camp members and she kisses him for the first time. And you can tell something's happening, or he kisses her, I should say. So she's like, this is weird. Should this be happening? And you kind of get this sense that something's off. But at that point, you don't know the wild card thing here. You just don't. So you're like, what is this? And then, we go to her dreamscape of sorts, and we see her and her brother just giggling about, Dad and Lenny, and just being like, ooh, hoo, hoo, this is so funny. So I feel like they're almost like weirdly tackling like uncomfortable topics at that time of talking about like gay and lesbian partnerships and stuff like that. And even at the end, we find out transgender type topics, but I'll get to that a little bit more. So I think initially, like, if I recall, like, I mean, it almost like confused me at first because you don't know. And I think things start coming together towards the end. So let's keep going. We have way more deaths. Meg dies in the shower, and then we have Judy come right after that.
Fucking Meg.
I feel like it almost goes from 0 to 60 because it's like a couple are happening, and then all of a sudden we go to our, apex here, and we're like, yep, nope, everyone's gonna die.
I after Meg throws Angela in the water, my favorite Meg related scene is after he does that, and then the other like counselor that's on the dock just goes, "You're a real peckerhead." You know that, Meg?
Yeah. Who's peckerhead besides John Prine? I don't know.
Yeah, you tried to drown a child. You're a real peckerhead.
That was probably
you were
super
literally
harsh.
A counselor. Yeah, you were a counselor who tried to drown a child. You know what? Real peckerhead move.
But yeah. So now we're just gonna go towards. I'm just gonna jump towards like. This is the moment we're all waiting for. So again, I already mentioned you kind of have this feeling that it's Angela, and then boom, she has her boyfriend's head basically cut off, and she's just like, I'm now coddling it, and I'm just rubbing it. Then all of a sudden, she does the look. She has no clothes on, and we find out that Angela is actually Peter. And it's just like once you start seeing those things unfold, you're like, click, 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 click. Everything comes together. You're like, okay, Aunt Martha is straight psycho. And also this whole situation, like I talk about like transgender things, because I was trying to read into this, and I was like, because it was something that always stuck out with me, that I feel like they're almost like trying to touch on these things, because I like also read that like this, like people started coming after the movie about kind of having these transphobic type undertones and whatnot. But like, I kind of think the idea was like less about making horror that someone could possibly be transgender, but to like think of the turmoil that someone faces being forced to be someone that they're not, and like how that could actually affect their psyche. So she already went through this traumatic experience and then goes through another traumatic experience living with Aunt Martha, who's like, I've always wanted a girl. And you're like,
and she's somehow in like a stage play in 1938,
yeah.
like, for some reason. Like,
I love her like side comments where she's like just talking to herself. She's just
that
like,
just won't do it all. Yeah.
What would this be? Yeah, no, it's great.
She's definitely stage acting too, because she goes from shouting, she's constantly projecting right in the kids' faces.
Yeah. And I'm like,
then,
so is that a choice? Like, there's so many questions. I've seen this movie a dozen times, and I still have so many unanswered questions every time I watch it.
But I mentioned about being in the writer's room, and I feel like the way, because you don't know all these things, but you kind of have assumptions, and I'm just like, imagine being a writer being like, I got it. I know how we can tell everyone who the killer is. Let's just have them freeze, do a weird face, and show their penis.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's like, hear me out.
Yeah. And then Ronnie, who's the only good guy in the movie, by the way.
Right.
Ronnie, the oddly jacked camp counselor with the insanely short shorts.
Aren't there? I mean, all of the guy counselors are pretty buff, but
he's like looks like a bodybuilder.
Yeah, no, Ronnie's huge. But I mean, Gino and the other one is also pretty big as well.
Yeah,
I don't think those guys are bad either. They're all just.
That's true. Ronnie is just like, I guess because you're introduced to them so early on. You're introduced to the cook and Mel,
he seems
and they're
like
all
a top, counselor of sorts.
Well, and you just assume he's going to be an absolute scumbag because Mel and the cook and everybody are absolute scumbags.
Yeah.
And he's also big and jacked and like intimidating that you're kind of like, oh, he's absolutely going to be a shitbird. But he ends up being like totally fine. Like, he's one of the most redeemable characters in the whole thing. Like, whenever that last scene that you mentioned, one of the things that I never noticed in all the other times that I watched it, I don't know how I missed this, was when they have the guy standing there with the Angela mask on and, fully nude with, everything. Ronnie goes, she's a boy. I have never heard it before. I can't believe I never heard it before. And I just thought to myself, like, Ronnie, we're all looking at the same thing. We know.
Why you say that?
You got bigger fish. Also, you got bigger fish to fry, Ronnie. Like, there's a head on the ground.
I always question about this. I'm like, did Ricky not ever know, or was Ricky protecting Angela?
No, Ricky definitely knew. In my mind, Ricky definitely, because even at the beginning of the movie, when they're still with Aunt Martha, he's like, she gives him the thing about the physicals.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll never tell, because she's a doctor apparently, Aunt Martha.
When I first heard that, though, I thought she was just being a weirdo because she said she was a doctor, and I was just like, she wanted to be hush-hush. But the moment you point that out, that actually makes a lot of sense. That, she wants to cover up. Yeah, I got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. This movie is the thing I love about it is it's got so many fantastic lines, so many fantastic scenes. Like, it's so quotable. I mean, even just like, we haven't even touched on, like, why is Meg trying to get with Mel?
Yeah.
Meg is, I'm just going to, for the sake of argument, I'm going to assume Meg is 18. But she could be younger than that. Yeah. Mel is conservatively 70 years old. Like, what the absolute fuck is happening there? There's 100 things like that you're just like, why did they make this decision? What the hell does it mean? But then, the final scene, like, I watched it the other night. Again, probably the dozenth time. I still get goosebumps at the final scene. The sting, the face, the green. And then they just hold on the face for the credits. Like, it's just such an insane reveal that you're just like, there's no way they would do something like that. And then you're staring at a crazy mask with a poor guy's dick floating on screen.
Yeah, no, like I said, timeless classic. I think those are the redeeming factors of it. It's just like
here's some people that really are like, because this is like one of the all-time biggest like cult classic films you can think of, right? Why? Let me put it this way: a lot of people give the filmmaker a lot of credit because it's kind of aged in a unique way. I don't know why people think that he did all these things intentionally when he clearly did so many other dumb things unintentionally. Why does the cop have the worst fake mustache in the world?
I know.
Like, do you think that the filmmaker that decided to do that also decided to subtly put in all of these nuanced arguments about gender identity?
Right.
I would say no. I think he was just trying to make like a fucking shocking movie. And he was like, I mean, but he still posts little hints in there of things where you're like, did he do some of this stuff on purpose? Like, was he really just trying to broach some like taboo issues of the time? Like the thing that I didn't notice until not that long ago was the opening credits when what's it say? It's dedicated to mom, a doer. Did you notice that?
I actually,
like, what in the absolute fuck does that mean? Like, there's just so much cryptic stuff in this movie. It's
she's
just
not a do nothing bitch.
Yeah,
that's
it's
what
like,
I take from that.
In memory of mom, like suggesting she's dead. In memory of mom, a doer. I don't know. It's just like there's just so much weird cryptic stuff in this movie.
Yeah, I think what's like the cool thing, I think, of when something becomes a cult classic, because I don't think anyone goes in intentionally. I think it's just like it breaks down into so many bits and pieces where you're like, I think almost it's like people see through that it's like it was slightly unintentional. They're like, I don't know. I guess if I'm thinking about it, he had to have known what he was doing to a certain extent. And I think like that type of ending, and maybe because like they were being compared so much like Friday the 13th and there were so many slasher films coming out at that time that like, how can we stand out? They're like, let's do this. And and I think like being able to take that position and stand by it, and then people are like, I see you, and I think as life has progressed and people have gone more progressive, they're like, you attach to that and you're like, who would have thought to do that in the early 80s in such a conservative world?
Yeah, it's definitely not something that a lot of different things were touched on throughout the film. It's weird that you don't see it repeated more often nowadays, actually. Yeah, you would think more people would be more interested in tackling different, perspectives, but yeah, it doesn't come around.
I mean, do you think I guess if we can do this sidebar conversation, do you think someone like Jordan Peele though kind of might be another person who's like, let's talk about issues, but this, I think like he kind of falls into that. And I've seen some other ones that kind of do it too, but.
Yeah, Jordan Peele definitely puts social, issues into his films. It's just weird that, it doesn't happen enough, because you see the success that you get from Sleepaway Camp, and even George Romero with a lot of his social commentary on consumerism. It's weird that more people didn't try to incorporate it, and instead you get, Paranormal Activity and The Conjuring, which they mean nothing.
Yeah, I actually recently I think I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember which one it was now. I think maybe it was Dead and Lovely or something, but they were talking. Yeah, I think it was, because they were talking about Little Shop of Horrors. Seen that movie 100 times. And I never really paid attention to the lyrics of like the introductory song. And they talked about how it was basically the whole movie was about the perils of capitalism. And when they put it, and I was like, now I feel absolutely stupid that I never like kind of put those things together, really like identified those themes when I was watching it. Like, I feel like there probably is a lot more of those out there that like maybe the filmmaker, maybe the writer, whoever did intend for that to be the message, and maybe it didn't come through as clearly on screen, or it just got bastardized, throughout all the different cooks in the kitchen of producing a studio film, for example. But it's weird because Sleepaway Camp does all those things, but like if it wasn't for, Mel being Mel, or a boom mic in the shot, or
there's definitely
Ricky cussing, or the fake mustache, like, would we even know about this film?
Right.
Ricky is the king of shit talk.
Oh, I
and
love
he
Rick.
rules.
I could listen to Ricky just be like, "Fuck you, you piece of shit."
He has the best line. He has the best line when they're playing baseball, and he says, "This guy blows dog dicks."
I didn't even think that's what you were going to say, but that's a great one. I thought Ricky, I think we were going to go when he goes, "Eat shit and die, Ricky," and he goes,
"Oh yeah,
eat shit and live, Paul," I think, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
but he's like, "This guy blows dead dogs, and that's what causes the eat shit and die, Ricky."
Oh my God, Ricky. It's so perfect. Like, they just were, you could tell they were just like, yeah, just cuss at him, and he just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, be a kid, do whatever.
Oh, it's so good.
All right, Steve, your film was so interesting.
It was. Not what I expected, even at all.
Yeah.
Yes. So I found this on the Netflix, and it was kind of just by happenstance that we decided to do Camp Slashers, but then I had also watched this film. But just a quick reminder, I chose Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight, 2020 film, directed by Bartosz Kowalski, and then it is a Polish film. Quick IMDb rundown. A group of technology-dependent teenagers go to offline camp, so they're losing their technology privileges, and then a group of them common hiking in the woods without access to smartphones will not end. However, this is all written in half-broken English, but basically a small portion of the campers break off to go do more extreme camping away from the main campsite, and you get to meet Zozia. She's our main protagonist, our final girl, and then you have a couple of other friends along. They're a bit stereotypical in Ulick, who's kind of a nerdy video gaming kid. You have the blonde Aniela, who kind of fits into that classic slutty, girl that, they make mention, like there's a lot of meta in this film, and that, she plays off of that and says, I like to have fun, but that's not who I am. I don't want to be classified like that.
Yeah, they set up the archetypes and then they betray them a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So while they're in the woods, they also run afoul of not just one, but two deformed monsters, making my film better than Brian's.
Okay. Are we ready to talk about the monsters? Are we there yet? Because
yes, we can just jump into the monsters, because you're somewhat introduced them earlier in the film. The opening scene is a postman who rides up on this remote ass cabin, and he hears some noises in the basement, and he looks in through a basement window and is dragged through and killed. And then you also see the escape. You don't actually see the monsters, but you see the escape as they both kill their mother as well.
I mean, should we almost appropriately kind of call them like these like aliens of sorts? Like, they're basically looking for a host, which I honestly, when you get to know who they are and how this happened, I feel like are some of the most unique, especially for this type of subgenre, most unique like murderers that you can come across.
I did not expect aliens to be in their origin story. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's it's a real big surprise. I mean, the past two films that we just talked about, like, both of the killers were essentially, you could say, bred through societal circumstance.
Yeah.
Cropsey being a clumsy asshole and hating women, and Pete being, forced against his will to live a way that he did not want. But yeah, you find the origin story of the monsters, that this rock falls from space, and curious kids pick it up, put it under their beds, and venom comes out and possesses them and turns them into monsters.
Yeah, normally your redneck killers are not victims of a space virus, in my experience.
Right. Normally.
But have either of you seen another slasher movie called Slaughterhouse from 1987.
I have not actually.
It sounds familiar, but I do not recall it.
I just watched it maybe, I don't know, the last 6 months. I'd never seen it before. Buddy is the character who's the murderer. He's like a son, of the redneck family who used to own a slaughterhouse. Look up Buddy and then look up the killers from this movie. It is Buddy with boils.
Okay.
Like, it is just, when I saw it, I was like, down to the overalls, the axe, he just looks like Buddy.
Buddy Bacon? Is that his full name?
Buddy Bacon. Yeah. Buddy from Slaughterhouse with boils.
For sure. That is 110%. Yeah.
House
is what I would say that with boils.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. There were so many references in this movie, and that one's like, some of them's really obvious, some of them kind of obscure. It was wild.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of the crux of this film, and why I'm saying it's better than all the others. A lot of people will watch this film and they'll say it's derivative, but you know what else is derivative? The iPhone 12. So,
everything comes full circle. You know what? Actually, you're bringing up the technology, and that's what I felt like made this film even stand out to me as well. Because when we all talk about trying to disconnect from life, what is usually the first thing we're doing? Hey, we're gonna go camping. That's just this. So when I saw this concept, I'm like, yeah, I think we all kind of need that.
I think it was. Even structurally, it was such a great way to close that tech plot hole.
Right.
Because like normally they just go, we haven't got any reception, in the last, few decades, all of a sudden people have to think about, everyone talks about like how short a movie, Home Alone would be if cell phones existed, that sort of thing.
Right.
So everyone has to worry about closing that plot hole now. I just thought it was a really clever one, because then you're literally not thinking about it at all after that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, they take it away very quickly.
It also makes it more important when the one guy who ended up getting killed early on had a phone, and it kind of also like put emphasis on how important that could have been to like the survival or the moving of the plot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And also it plays a little bit of that same kind of not just drugs and sex, but now technology can lead you to your death as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mentioned how it is derivative, but there's a lot of references. One of them is one of the monsters kills a guy with the sleeping bag kill from Friday the 13th.
Verbatim. It's literally from 6, I think. Whatever Jason Goes to Hell is, right?
Jason Goes to Hell is 9. But 6... I believe it is from 6 that you're thinking, but it's also from Jason X as well.
Oh, that's right. They do bring it back around.
Yeah, they bring it back.
Yeah, I want to say I'm pretty sure it's 6.
Yeah, I believe it's 6 that they, because that's the one where Jason comes back to life and he's full on gross uber zombie.
He's zombie Jason at that point. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and then they started going over the top. But some of the other references that you may or may not have seen, the Wrong Turn axe kill.
I did not even write that one down. I wrote down a whole bunch of them, but didn't write that one down.
When he chops the cop in half, that's directly taken from Wrong Turn. When Zoja winds up stabbing one of the monsters, you hear kind of a Psycho-esque soundtrack, but also the shot of the knife going through the bed is also, I believe, reminiscent of another Friday the 13th film.
Yeah, they do that a couple times, I feel like. And they even come back and do it in, like, Freddy vs. Jason, I think, too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there's, like, that string, that, like, quick stinging string thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just in general, the soundtrack is very Carpenter-esque in other parts.
There was even a part in the soundtrack, speaking of that they kept doing this reoccurring theme that was very reminiscent of the main theme from Cannibal Holocaust, too. That like, I'm not going to
It's been a while since I've seen that one, but
I'm not going to hum it because it's going to be absolutely dreadful. But like, it's just like, it was very reminiscent of Cannibal Holocaust. He crawls over the rear of the car, like up the rear window. Mm-hmm. Was like, I would assume Halloween, when Michael's escaping from the sanitarium.
That's also a great stunt though, because when she pulls off, that whoever's in, I don't think it was the actual actor. I think it might have been a stunt guy in a fat suit, and he falls and he hits the back window and breaks it.
Yeah, that was a great sequence overall.
That's a great stunt, and that's one of the best things about this film overall is all of these kills and everything we're talking about. It's pretty much all practical with a little bit of effects enhancement.
Yeah,
but other than that, it's all practical and it's mostly in daylight, which is they're not trying to cover anything up.
Yeah, there's no rain, there's no dark, there's no nothing to kind of muddy things up. Yeah, I was pretty impressed by that. Let me see. There was one other one I wrote down that because it did feel like I kind of wrote when I wrote down, but it was like, I mean, it felt like a Polish love letter to Western slasher movies.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it was Scream. Like, there were so many slashers that were referenced about it.
Yeah, and what I kind of liked about it is like, because if we're talking about like the derivative, we're talking a lot about that, but like. The fact that like you go into it and you're like, oh yeah, I think she finally got him, and then they're still alive. Kind of has that like alien-esque quality to me. Like where it's like they're gonna keep coming back somehow. Like they just keep spreading. But I feel like it also gave this like intensity to those like killers of like. I genuinely was like, man, this could probably go on forever. Like as far as like a series goes, but at the same time, I thought that was pretty brutal to like. Kind of give this almost relief, and then all of a sudden we're like, nope, we're ending on doom, and I kind of love that. I kind of love when things end like that.
Yeah. Just to add to that, they are currently in production of the sequel, and it should be out October 2021.
Oh, nice.
That's it.
Yeah, I would definitely watch it
for sure. I would definitely watch the second one.
My favorite kill. The one that, and again, I liked a lot of the ones. A lot of them were like homage type of kills, but I really love the one, and this might be a reference to something that went over my head. But when they're just sitting there on that little ridge, and they're just like talking, it's my favorite. Yeah. And then they look at her, and there's a spike through the back of her head through her mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh Jesus Christ, he just didn't see it coming.
I forget the character's name, but like the guy that she was with. It was one of those things that I'm like, I was convinced that guy was dead. And then come to find out he gets killed by not one of these alien murderers, but rather just the local hick who is scared.
Yeah, just a local scared hick. And I think the character's name is Bartek. But yeah, he has kind of an interesting... not necessarily arc, but storyline that he lives on his own away from everybody else, because throughout the film you learn that Bartek is a gay man. I don't man boy. They're like older, but
yeah,
he's a gay teenager, and I think this is something playing to the director revealing attitudes in Poland being more conservative than he would prefer, because also at one point they also introduce a reverend character, and the priest. The first few shots that you see of the priest are fantastic ways of revealing who a character is, because he steps out of his car with these really nice shoes. He has a really, really nice watch on, and if priests are supposed to be, humble and impoverished.
Yeah, he's a prick right away.
Yeah, right away he's a prick, and then when he gives his prayer, he just kind of rattles it off. He doesn't care. But at one point, Bartek is escaping from the monsters. He escapes to the church, which is nearby the camp, and the priest winds up taking him hostage and trying to torture him, for being a homosexual. And I found that scene odd because the priest ties him up and has a ball gag on hand. What is the priest into?
Yeah, well, that was what I was saying. I was like,
he said he remembered him from last year, though, too.
Right. Yeah.
So you're
That's what I was curious about. I was like, what were we trying to get to about the priest there? Felt like it was never clear to me.
I think it's the general hypocrisy and everything of, just like, general conservatism, and is not, the director is not a fan, I don't believe.
Yeah, I know Poland is definitely like considered to be one of the more certainly most conservative in a homophobic way cultures in the EU, especially when some of the other countries in the EU are like among the most LGBTQ friendly nations. Poland kind of sticks out as a sore thumb there, I think, in a lot of ways. So I liked that they took it in a different direction, because originally, what that character's name, which I've already forgotten, which when he uses like a homophobic slur early on when he's talking to like kind of jockish guy.
Daniel.
Yeah, and then he comes back later and kind of opens up to the girl about about being gay. But it was I was waiting for something to for that circle to kind of close with the priest. I'm like, what is but did he get the wood chipper?
He eventually got the wood chipper. So
yeah. I wrote down Chekhov's wood chipper. Maybe the first, exactly. Like you look out the window and there's a wood chipper. You're like, oh boy.
Yeah. Bartek runs past the wood chipper and you go, oh, why is that there? Yeah. And then it turns on when the priest goes to investigate it. So yeah. But just to jump back really quick to Brian, you mentioned your favorite kill of Aniela on the rock when she's talking to Bartek. I think the best part of that isn't just that how out of nowhere it happens, but then as Bartek's running away, they cut to that wide shot of the monster standing on top of the hill and lifts her body up and just tosses it down the hill. And that's so brutal. But again, it's in full daylight. You're pulled away from it. Yeah.
And it didn't even look like a dummy. Like, they did a really nice job. You really thought it was going to flop down there like it was, full of straw. But it was, that was by far my favorite scene in the movie. I thought that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, just the whole film, like I said, it's derivative. You're not going to find too much in the way of being surprised, but it still also has some of these social cues that you don't find in a lot of other films. It kind of gives you an insight into, the Polish attitudes, because we mentioned there's the homophobia, but then there's also like problems with obvious right wing, the Nazis who show up.
Mm-hmm.
At the
they're
end.
celebrating Hitler's birthday or whatever. The like white, and they even say like they're well known like local right wing extremist dickheads where they're like, hey, they're drinking and wearing Nazi outfits, arrest them if you see them, kind of thing.
They make a call in to the cop who eventually gets split in half. But they call him up and say, so and so are out and drinking and causing a trouble. If you see him, pick him up. And he just kind of goes, all right, I guess. But doesn't try to make any attempt at that.
Mm-hmm. One thing I wrote down that I just couldn't, for some reason, just not honestly ruin, but it just stuck in my craw at the end of the movie, was when they're in the basement after the video game streamer kid gets his tongue bit out. Mm-hmm. He's pretty fucking chatty for not having a tongue. Am I wrong in saying that? Like he's
I don't know. I've never lost a tongue, so I don't totally know.
Yeah,
but I with that kill, like that murderer sorts, like I did think when I was watching it though that he was going to be one of the people to die. Because he kind of had that underdog character. They're building him up to be this very interesting character, and I think you already knew that Zosha was like gonna be your lead here, but no, he definitely was talkative.
Yeah,
I love how she was trying. She's like, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
I can't.
You know why? Dude got his tongue bit out. Give him a fucking break. Like, at one point in the movie,
Can you
do
enunciate
think like
a little better?
I'm just can't pick it up. But it's like at one point in the movie, you do think like, okay, he's made it this far. He's probably going to make it the whole way. Right. Yeah.
Because he's a bitch for a little while there. He's just freaking out. Like I said, you kind of have this, like, I genuinely thought he was going to be one of the people. I thought it was going to be like him and Zosha, just like till the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They at least do give him a decent arc, though, of finding courage in that, he does try to distract the one monster at one time and then does come up and stab him in the back. He just doesn't know how ineffective that would be.
You're right.
Yeah.
What I don't know if you guys kind of felt this way or thought about it, or maybe it's something I missed through watching it, but like I found it to be odd that like the killers were in such this mindset, anyone in their way is going to die. Yet Zosha didn't die when there was a chance for Zosha to die.
Yeah, I was waiting for like there to be some sort of reveal where, because they kept flashing back to her past and the car accident that killed her parents and all that. And I kept thinking, is she going to have the same virus thing? Like, you know what I mean? What's the connection with her and the killers that they were kind of sparing her? But they also spared, or at least temporarily spared, I forgot his name already. The kid that like I said, that uses the homophobic slur earlier, but then comes back later as being gay.
Yeah.
When he traps him in the confessional, he hides in the confessional. Classic slasher move: hide in the only place in the room there is to hide. Like there's a fucking, it's like there's a Tupperware tote in the middle of the room, and he just got inside it. And one of the giant Buddy Bacon guys open the door and he's just there and you're like, oh, well, he's dead. It's an off-screen kill, whatever. Why did they let him go that time?
Right.
Yeah. I assume it's mostly based on food needs and whether or not yeah, because I mean the twins who start out, the kids, I mean they're just little kids,
right?
But then their first kill is their dog, and they're eating it.
Yeah,
and then they have later you see in the film Daniel is all pieced up, like and butchered up. Yeah. So I'm assuming it's all based on food needs and whether or not somebody has attacked them.
That's true. Yeah, they're not necessarily just like driven by a bloodlust or something like that. Yeah,
because the monster that kills Daniel in the sleeping bag is not the monster that killed Aniela with the pike through the mouth. So you could assume those are two different food sources.
Yeah, that makes sense. One of them's got bigger, more hangy boils.
Yeah, one's got more hangy boils. One's bald and the other's not. One's got overalls and the other isn't.
That's true. That's why that was Buddy Bacon. That's the one I was called, but he was different than the one that was in the church, I think. But this does lead me to a very important question, though. Where is Jason Alexander in this movie? At what point? I missed him. Is he in there at some point? Did I miss him? Is there any discussion of the McDLT?
Well, the kid Ulek, he is known as Poland's Jason Alexander.
He's the Polish. Now I'm imagining Polish Seinfeld, and
that's pretty good.
I liked it. Here's my argument. I like movies like this that are like homage kind of movies because I've seen them from other cultures, and this one I thought was particularly well done. But it's hard for me to put a movie like this up. Not even saying it's derivative, but there is absolutely, like, it pays homage to a lot of other movies. It's hard for me to put it up against what we consider classics of the genre, subgenre. When so much of the value that it adds is paying homage to movies that have come before it. I don't know that intention or inherently means it has like less merit or something. I don't know. Just for me personally, it's hard for if I'm even talking about like my favorite horror movies of the year or something like that. Something that is one of those kind of movies that pays a lot of homage to movies of the past. It's even hard for me to put it on those lists because I'm like, it felt like a companion piece almost. You know what I mean? I don't know that that's fair to say, but
I would rebut that with saying, even though this one does pay a lot of homage, it takes the time and care again to do the effects practically. A lot of people could just, do the crappy blood splatters. They could do things off screen. This one is trying to do its best in capturing all of those little moments that we loved from past films. And it does it with a more competent script as compared to definitely The Burning, because The Burning is just all perverts. Nobody's likable.
Listen, who is the Polish Tom Savini? I didn't do the research on that, but I'm curious.
I'm not sure.
Polish Jason Alexander.
I'm not sure who the Polish Tom Savini is of this film. That's a good question.
I mean, looking at them, I felt like nobody sleeps in the woods. I felt like it was in a way like a fun movie, I guess. Like that's kind of how again, I'm coming from a totally inexperienced angle here, but I walked away being like, I enjoyed that. That was different for me at least, and like seeing those type of like thinking about a camp type scenario, even with anything that was derivative, I still felt it was like a unique take. But I think I always come back to, if we're talking about camp slashers, because there was such that like push for them even in the 80s and so on and so forth, and we've seen subsequently after that, is that I still think timeless is like the word I come back to. So. And I liked The Burning. I did. I think the only reason why I don't know if
you don't have to lie. You don't have to sit here and lie to my goddamn face, patronize me in front of the podcast audience.
You know what? I'm a kind human being, Brian.
And I know you, and I know that isn't true.
Go fuck yourself, Brian.
You peckerhead. You're a real peckerhead, Meg.
Yeah, but I liked it. But I think the other thing that like I prefer even about Sleepaway Camp was just like, I don't know, there's like the continuity of it. I almost felt like The Burning could have been like 20 minutes shorter.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I feel like it's kind of tight, but yeah, you're right. There probably is 10 minutes you could cut out of camp shenanigans, but just Jason Alexander, he's chewing. When you got a man like Jason Alexander and he's chewing the scenery like he does, you don't stop him, right? You let him work. You let him work his craft.
So is the ultimate question here, is this what we're getting at, is did anyone change their mind?
Well, do you guys want to talk about, is there any one thing we haven't talked about that you don't like about your own movie?
I mean, I got one. Oh my god, it was like the actual like script, I feel like in a lot of ways like super corny, very sexist. I'm like those are like personal things that I'm like, yeah, no, don't like it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is anybody's gonna get an Oscar for screenwriting for Sleepaway Camp. Like that's part of the charm, though, right? It comes with the territory.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was about to cut you off, Steve.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I think overall all three films do not have the strongest scripts. They're not going to win awards. I would say The Burning is probably the weakest because everybody's a pervert, but also just the general.
There's a weak. You sense blood in the water, and you're just pouncing on me. That's what you're doing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I see what's happening. I see it.
I'm sorry.
He knows his audience. Look at me over here, being like, "Yeah, he's right."
I know. I feel very ganged up on right now. I see how this dynamic's gonna work.
The motivation for Cropsey, he's supposed to be chasing after the guys who burned him, but he kills a bunch of women. You spend an hour of him killing women before the canoe scene, and then he kills the sex worker right off the bat. Right, yeah, so but she had nothing to do with him being.
That's burned. What I'm saying. He's tormented. He's out of his mind. He's a psycho killer. I mean, come on. He's just like the man's a psycho killer. I know. I was just that popped in my head as well.
I guess the conceit is he was already a danger.
Yes, he was a rat bastard beforehand. That's why he got what he deserved. So in that argument, though, so why in Sleepaway Camp, why does he kill all the kids in the sleeping bag? When all the younger kids, they take him out on the. You remember they take him out in the woods.
So
they don't do it. The only thing I can think of they do to him is after Peckerhead Meg throws Angela in the lake. Peckerhead Meg. Have you ever seen Uncle Peckerhead? That's a sequel.
I haven't yet.
Yeah, it's super fun. Anyway, after Peckerhead Meg throws Angela in the lake and she gets out and Ricky's like taking her away, or the counts or whatever, some kids kick sand at her that are on the beach.
That's true.
And I'm like,
that's actually a good point.
Did she literally murder a bunch of like 10-year-olds in their sleep because they kicked sand on her?
I think at a certain point she made a decision that no one here at this camp was good. Like, I think because, that was that piece.
There was also the scene where they threw a bunch of water balloons at her too.
Yeah, but those were the older kids.
Yeah, I thought
that was that bro that wore jogging shorts and never had a shirt on.
Like, fuck you, you come down here,
I'm gonna. Yeah, those weren't
impression?
the same kids. The kids, yeah, that was Ricky dead on.
Ricky.
No, but like those kids that were in the woods were like, yeah, they were all like the little kids.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think you remembering the point about them kicking the sand. But I think that moment of her going in the water was also the flip. Like she's like, nope, no one really actually truly cares, or no one's gonna have my back. Because and that's when she, after that point, Meg, Judy, Mel, the kids, and then her boyfriend. I'm forgetting his name.
My point is,
Paul.
The way Angela feels about the whole camp is the way Cropsey feels about the Earth.
The Earth.
He's out. He is just out to kill
light
people.
A fire under this entire world.
I'm going to fucking kill everyone.
Sometimes people just like to watch the world burn.
I'll throw out my thing that we didn't talk about. I'm actually really surprised. Not surprised, but we didn't get too far into the plot. But there's one scene in The Burning that is borderline unforgivable for me, and it's very late in the movie. It's when Cropsey has abducted Alfred, takes him to what I assume is the
Legends of the Hidden Temple
ruins
set?
of the old. Yeah, and I saw golden monkeys, and I didn't want to say anything, but I'm pretty sure you're right. No, but first of all, is that supposed to be the old camp because it's cement? There, I don't know.
Yeah.
In any case, takes Alfred there to presumably lure Todd, right? Mm-hmm. Lets him scream, lets him holler, so Todd would come because he ultimately wants to kill Todd. When Todd gets there, there is a scene in which he is meant to discover, I think her name's Karen's body. But instead, because she wasn't there that day for the shooting of that scene, they just inserted a really horrible quick cut from her earlier death scene that happened in a totally different setting. And it's horrible. It just right at the climax of the movie, it kind of takes you out of it a little bit. And when you know it's coming, you can deal with it a little bit. But I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, wait, what the fuck was that? So like, it feels like the movie does climax at the canoe scene a little bit, because that scene at the end, even though I don't hate the ending with Alfred, stabbing him and saving the day, blah, blah, blah. Why do you have to insert that shitty cutscene of a previous, I think it was even a still image. It was fucking terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and I'm
eventually...
not going to win. I can tell I'm not going to win, so I'm laying in.
It's fine.
Yeah.
The one thing that stuck out to me, and maybe I just missed it. Maybe it's in the subtitles. I don't know. You guys can correct me if you want. We never learn why Zosia has to go to technology-free camp.
You don't.
Why does her...
Oh, yeah.
What, the only thing I could think with that is that, do you remember, like, right before the crash, I didn't think at first, but then I started questioning. I was like, was she the one distracting the guy driving?
No, because I thought the car wrecked into her family's car.
Oh, I thought she was in that car.
I felt like there was something that was like, oh boy, now I want to rewatch it, because I felt like there was something that was kind of alluding to it, but then they never came out. Yeah, I don't remember them ever coming back out and saying it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like, why would she go to technology-free camp? Unless it's just like she gets shipped around to camps.
It sounds super scandalous, though, from the counselor that was with that group of people was like, okay, yep, nope, we're not going to read your
Yeah, she says we can talk about it later.
Tell me when you're ready or whatever she says, yeah.
Which is what made me think it had nothing to do with the camp itself. It's just like Zosia gets shipped around because she's an orphan.
Yeah.
She's just like a troubled kid that they send off to camp because they don't know what to do with her in the summer.
That's very possible.
I don't know. Just another interesting note, though, about that crash. I'm pretty sure that burn is also practical.
Really?
Yeah, and they I thought I saw it on Reddit even before I even knew this film existed. I thought I saw it on a filmmaker subreddit where they were they did the burn and then they placed the actor's face over digitally.
Interesting.
So
it's huge for that type of stuff, like that type of technology.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's an after effect that they put the actor's face on a crawling actor stuntman.
Yeah.
Afterwards, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a good effect. I just assumed it was CGI. Yeah, I guess like I didn't take a super close look, but it was a pretty intense effect.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
but,
yeah.
So I guess this
Dun, dun,
we've
dun.
arrived at the ultimate question.
I feel like we need some sort of sound effect.
Yeah.
Maybe I can get there.
I think at this point, dun, 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 at this point, I personally feel it's fairly clear that no one changed their mind towards the burning. Is that accurate to say?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'm coming to terms with this. I'm going to regroup. I'm going to take a whole different approach next time.
You did so well, though.
I'm going to do some curls or something. I don't know. I got to get psyched up beforehand next time. But that said, did either of you change your mind?
I mean, I wouldn't say I changed my mind because I've always had an affinity for Sleepaway Camp. Mm-hmm. It's hard to, back away from it, and it has the best line of all three movies of "This guy blows dead dogs." So
I do not remember that in Polish at any point.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you look at Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight from the perspective of somebody who's never seen any of these films before, like we all have history with Sleepaway Camp, but if you're 18 and just watching this movie, you're going to see so many things that you don't know are references. But it's really going to knock it out of the park for you to see all these gross ass practical effects.
That's
like
true.
in broad daylight. So yeah, if I'm young, I think this is a fantastic movie, but the history and just kind of the pedigree of Sleepaway Camp, I would still kind of push towards that movie.
Yeah, I think I echo just a lot of what you said, Steve, because that's kind of like what I mentioned before was like, I feel like if you're not thinking about how things are kind of can be derivative on it, but like it was unique and it was fun in its own right. And it's something I don't think we have seen collectively in a movie before, or even on like related to this subgenre. So I didn't really change my mind. I still like feel like in a lot of ways Sleepaway Camp is timeless, but I still had fun with Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight. So that'd be my number 2.
That said, if given the option, so it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, you're switching your pick to Sleepaway Camp.
I'm not switching it, but it would be my number 2.
Okay, so Sleepaway Camp's your number 2.
Yeah.
Meg, you're sticking with Sleepaway Camp.
And his would be my number 2.
Oh boy. Okay.
So
it's
I
on
am
you.
truly the
tiebreaker. This actually is working out well. Like maybe it's whoever comes in third or whatever.
So I still prefer The Burning over either of these movies. And I even, like I said, I really like them both. I still prefer The Burning over both of these movies. But I will say the one thing that I kept thinking the entire time I was watching Nobody Sleeps in the Woods Tonight is the ADR. And we didn't really talk about it that much.
Mm-hmm.
It was good for ADR, but I felt like I wasn't getting the actual actors' performances. Like I couldn't get their tone of voice. There were times where I'm like, the main protagonist, or again, her name is escaping me. She was awesome. And I feel like I would have rather had subtitles. Like, and I'm not like, usually when I hear Netflix horror, I'm like, fuck off. Like, I'm just not even interested. I'm probably, there are certain things that Netflix has done that are awesome, but typically speaking, I've been turned off by most Netflix horror. I think this was a really, really an exception to that rule, but I am like, the ADR took me out of it a little bit because I wanted to hear the performances of the individual actors. Even if I don't understand their language, I can get their inflections and read the subtitles. So that alone, I'll probably have to lean towards Sleepaway Camp.
The champ is here.
She's so diplomatic until she learns she wins, and she's like, "Fuck you! You both suck.
Hey.
I played you like fiddles, you pieces of shit."
My little puppets.
Meg the Peckerhead at it again.
Peckerhead is my wrestling name.
Well, congratulations, Meg. The episode number 1, Camp Slashers, has gone down in history. And you took it home.
If I wake up with a crown tomorrow, don't be surprised. No, I think it's really fun. I think everyone had a great pick, and I think both of you guys did an excellent job. I feel like I'm going to come in strong next time on that. I feel like you guys are very smart, and I'm not trying to downplay myself, but I love it. I think you guys laid the groundwork, and I am so excited to do more of these episodes. So.
Yeah, that was a blast. That was a ton of fun. That said, I think what we'll probably do is in the coming days, weeks here, we'll put out maybe a little challenge once this is released to listeners and to our social media friends, and maybe get maybe some suggestions, and then maybe do like a list of 3 and say, hey, maybe we do a poll or something like that and say, of these 3, which one. Which topic should we tackle for the next episode? Mm-hmm. We'd also talked, Steve, about I think Maggie, we talked about it as well, about doing maybe some little mini episodes in between, mm-hmm. right? Doing a full-fledged episode every month, and then doing some little mini-sodes in between to kind of hold over and talk about topics and other little kind of fun horror-related things that we dabble in throughout the month. So,
yeah, maybe a little short reviews of new movies that aren't necessarily going to be on, the next big episode. But yeah,
I like it. Well, this was rad, guys. Super fun. Excited to do some more of these. And as we mentioned before, if you haven't already, come check us out over on Instagram at Halloween is Forever. You've got Hallow Forever at Hallow Forever on Twitter, Halloween is Forever on the Facebook page, and then feel free to shoot us a note at halloweenisforeverpod@gmail.com if you got some of them sweet suggestions for us. Looking forward to episode number 2.
Hell yeah.
Maybe we put up a poll too to see, were we right? Was Sleepaway Camp the real winner of this?
I feel like overwhelmingly it will be.
Probably.
I don't know if anyone's really going to want to come up against this, though.
Nobody wants to take on Peckerhead Meg. She'll throw you in the lake.
Old Peckerhead Meg, she'll throw you in the lake slick as shit. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. This was super fun. For Halloween is Forever, I am Brian.
I'm Megan.
And I'm Steve.
Thanks for coming and spooking around with us. We'll talk to you soon.